Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Thursday, August 21st, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. In Riverside, today's forecast calls for a high of 102 degrees Fahrenheit, with temperatures dipping to a low of 75. With such intense heat, remember to prioritize hydration and seek shade whenever possible. Coming up on the show, we'll examine the significant impact of tariffs imposed during the Trump administration on the Federal Reserve's carefully crafted interest rate plans and what that could mean for the wider economy. Then, we turn our attention to California, investigating the factors that are making it increasingly difficult to keep the state's hottest homes cool and comfortable during this summer's extreme weather. All this and more coming up on Alex's News. Stay tuned. We begin this morning with a deep dive into the Federal Reserve's latest monetary policy meeting minutes, which have just been released. They paint a clear picture of the central bank's major concerns, especially surrounding the impact of tariffs. For more on this, we turn to our financial reporter, Ethan. Ethan, what did these minutes reveal about the Fed's thinking?
Grace, it appears the Federal Reserve is caught between a rock and a hard place, or should I say between inflation and stagnation. The minutes from their July 29th and 30th meeting, released yesterday, Wednesday, August 20th, 2025, show that the majority of Fed officials were primarily worried about inflation heading higher. This concern, as reported by ABC News and Yahoo Finance, largely stems from President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs, and it actually outweighed worries about potential job losses. As a result, the central bank decided to hold its key interest rate steady at approximately 4.3% or within the 4.25% to 4.5% range for the fifth meeting in a row.
So tariffs are the big driver here. But how exactly do these tariffs work, and who really feels the bite from them?
That's a great question, Grace, and it's a crucial point of discussion for the policymakers. According to reporting from Yahoo Finance, Fed officials noted that foreign exporters were paying, at most, a modest part of the increased tariffs. This implies that domestic businesses and consumers were predominantly bearing these costs. Many companies are expected to pass these costs through to end customers over time. Tariffs, essentially, are taxes paid by United States importing companies to the United States Treasury. So, while foreign countries are affected, a significant portion of these costs usually ends up being paid by American consumers through higher prices.
It sounds like a classic economic debate. What are some of the counter-arguments to the Fed's primary concern that these tariffs will lead to sustained inflation?
Indeed, Grace, it is quite the economic tug-of-war. Historically, economic analyses and data, including insights from ucdavis.edu and taxfoundation.org, provide a strong counterargument to the sustained inflation view. Many economists suggest that broad tariffs are more likely to cause demand destruction and economic cooling. They argue this should actually lead to an interest rate cut, not a hold or a hike. Essentially, increased costs for businesses and reduced purchasing power for consumers can stifle overall economic activity, leading to slower economic growth, or even what's known as stagflation. That's a nasty combination of high prices and low economic growth, something economists caution against, as outlined by sources like PBS.org and AEI.org.
Fascinating, and I hear there were some voices of dissent within the Fed itself regarding this decision to hold rates steady.
Absolutely, Grace. Two members of the Fed's governing board, Christopher Waller and Michelle Bowman, both appointed during President Trump's first term, actually dissented in favor of a rate cut. As ABC News and the Tribune Chronicle reported, they argued that the inflationary impact of tariffs would likely be a one-time price increase rather than ongoing inflation. With core inflation cooling, they believed the Fed should cut rates, expressing greater concern for risks to the labor market. This marked the first dual dissent in favor of cutting rates since 1993, with Bowman specifically highlighting signs of less dynamism in the labor market.
Now, this all happened before that recent disappointing jobs report. How did that labor market data shake things up on Wall Street?
It completely shifted the landscape, Grace. The July jobs report, which came out just 2 days after these minutes were released, showed weak hiring and significant downward revisions for May and June. This signaled a cooling labor market and it immediately led Wall Street investors to dramatically increase their bets on a Fed rate cut at the next meeting, which is scheduled for September 16th and 17th, 2025, making that meeting just 26 days away. Before the report, the odds of a September rate cut were lower, but afterwards, the probability of a 25 basis point cut surged, with some market tools showing probabilities as high as 80% to over 90%, according to reports from Kiplinger.com and FoxBusiness.com.
So, with all eyes turning to Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's speech tomorrow, what can we expect him to say? Will he signal a September cut?
Grace, this speech at the Fed's annual economic symposium in Jackson, Wyoming is going to be a real tightrope walk for Powell. As analysts from Deutsche Bank and CBS News suggest, he's expected to acknowledge the complex backdrop of a softening labor market alongside persistent inflation concerns, especially those related to tariffs. While markets are heavily pricing in a September cut, analysts largely predict Powell will signal that policy easing is likely this year without explicitly committing to a September rate cut during his speech tomorrow, Friday, August 22nd. He is anticipated to emphasize the Fed's data-dependent approach, stressing that future decisions will hinge on incoming economic reports. It's a tricky balancing act for the Fed, caught between its dual mandate of stable prices and maximum employment.
It certainly sounds like a very tariff-IC situation for the Fed. Ethan, thank you for breaking down this complex economic story for us this morning.
My pleasure, Grace.
We've been discussing the Federal Reserve's latest minutes, with insights from ABC News, Yahoo Finance, The Tribune Chronicle, Kiplinger.com, Morningstar.com, FoxBusiness.com, Investing.com, CBSNews.com, UCDavis.edu, FRBSF.org, TaxFoundation.org, PBS.org, AEI.org, and analyses from Deutsche Bank, Bank of America, and Evercore ISI. Welcome back to our morning segment. For our second story this morning, we are turning our attention to the Inland Empire, where residents are facing a truly blistering challenge. Extreme heat warnings are in effect, with temperatures soaring as high as 115 degrees Fahrenheit, putting countless lives at risk. Joining us to shed more light on this urgent public health crisis is our reporter Chloe. Chloe, what's the latest on the ground?
Grace, it's certainly a taut asterisk topic, and unfortunately, it's more than just a figure of speech. The Inland Empire is indeed in the midst of a severe public health crisis due to these life-threatening temperatures. This kind of heat significantly elevates the risk of heat-related illnesses and, tragically, fatalities. It is why community groups and government agencies are stepping up with a multifaceted response.
It sounds incredibly serious. What specific efforts are being made to combat this dangerous heat, especially for the most vulnerable?
A pivotal effort, Grace, is being spearheaded by the nonprofit organization Comité Civico del Valle, often referred to as CCV. According to reporting from the Los Angeles Times, CCV has partnered with GoFundMe.org, which has allocated a substantial $500,000 to its, quote, weather resilience program, end quote. Their mission is to distribute crucial cooling devices directly to vulnerable residents in the desert communities near the Salton Sea, specifically in eastern Riverside and Imperial County. Their goal, in their own words, is to provide, quote, fairness, safety, and dignity, end quote, through this direct intervention.
That sounds like a vital lifeline. Can you tell us more about the specific risks these communities face and how effective CCV's program has been so far?
Absolutely, Grace. The urgency of this program is really underscored by some grim regional statistics, as ABC News has uncovered. Imperial County, for instance, had California's highest rate of heat-related emergency room visits in 2022. They recorded 196 incidents in 2023, tragically resulting in 11 deaths. Riverside County also saw a staggering 627 emergency room visits and 65 deaths in 2024. A significant number of these at-risk residents, Grace, live in aging, often uninsulated homes, including mobile homes, which can become incredibly dangerous ovens in this kind of heat. CCV's program aims to equip 100 families. And as of yesterday, August 20th, 2025, they have already installed 72 mini-split air conditioning units, distributed 389 air purifiers, and 4 reverse osmosis water filters. So a lot has been done in a short amount of time.
That's certainly making a difference, but I imagine installing air conditioning units isn't without its challenges. What kind of hurdles is CCV facing?
You've hit on a major one, Grace. A significant hurdle, as CCV's director Esther Bejarano points out, is the high permit costs for these mini-split AC installations. These can reach up to $900 per unit, which she states requires, quote, policy work, end quote, to address. While municipal permits for air conditioning installations are generally justified by regulatory, safety, and energy efficiency concerns, with fees typically ranging from $100 to $500 elsewhere, costs in Southern California can indeed reach $800 to $1,000. It is a substantial burden, especially for a nonprofit trying to bring relief.
That's quite a financial hurdle for a program trying to help those in need. Are there any efforts from local or state governments to ease these permit costs?
As of today, August 21st, 2025, there have been no public statements or emergency actions reported by local or state governments to waive, reduce, or expedite these permit fees in response to the heat wave or CCV's highlighted issues. This fee hurdle exists despite publicly funded programs like LIHE, which stands for the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, and California's LIWP ESA and the Imperial Irrigation District All-Weather Energy Savings Program. These programs claim to provide, quote, no-cost and, quote, cooling system installations and weatherization for qualifying low-income households in these very counties.
That sounds like a bit of a bureaucratic paradox. Why the discrepancy if there are programs designed to offer no-cost installations?
It is a complex issue, Grace. The, quote, no cost, end quote, typically means no direct expense to the resident. However, it doesn't exempt the implementing agencies, like CCV, from these mandatory local building permits. Local building departments impose these permits, and they aren't directly waived by federal or state programs, even if the funding for the installation comes from those sources. So bureaucratic complexities, limitations within grants, or the cumulative costs of these permits create a substantial burden for nonprofits like CCV. It is a bit of a Thomas Dickey asterisk situation.
Indeed. Beyond CCV's excellent work, what other groups or initiatives are active in mitigating the heat's impact?
There are several other crucial efforts underway. Groups like SWAG and Inland Compassion conduct vital outreach and provide services directly to the homeless population. Cooling centers in Riverside and San Bernardino counties offer much-needed air-conditioned refuge for anyone needing to escape the heat. Cities and counties themselves are intensifying their outreach programs for the homeless. And Meals on Wheels provides crucial checks on homebound seniors, ensuring they are safe and hydrated. For long-term resilience, the Inland Empire Waterkeepers Breeze program is working to map and utilize green spaces as natural cooling areas, which is an innovative approach to beating the heat in the long run.
It sounds like a comprehensive, though challenging, effort across the board to keep residents safe. Chloe, thank you so much for breaking down this critical situation for us. It's certainly a lot to take in, and we appreciate your detailed reporting.
My pleasure, Grace.
That was Chloe, with the latest on the Inland Empire's fight against the heat. We will continue to follow this story as it develops. Here are some other headlines. At the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, it seems some jobs are feeling a bit under the weather. More than 600 employees are receiving final termination notices as part of a controversial overhaul of the Department of Health and Human Services. This follows a court ruling that protected some CDC workers from layoffs, but not others. The union representing the workers says it's a bitter pill to swallow, citing a, quote, staggering lack of transparency from the government. In a move some are calling tragically ironic, about 100 of the eliminated positions are in the Violence Prevention Division, with the cuts coming less than 2 weeks after a fatal shooting on the CDC's own campus. projects aimed at preventing rape and child abuse are also on the chopping block. This latest round follows a history of terminations and reinstatements, leaving many employees in a state of clinical uncertainty about their future. Shifting gears to international policy, Uganda has struck a deal with the United States to accept deported migrants, as long as they do not have criminal records. The agreement specifies that unaccompanied minors will not be sent, and Ugandan officials say they are now working out the detailed modalities of the plan. The arrangement is based on a safe third country provision in U.S. law. However, some speculate the move could be a strategic play by Uganda to avoid potential U.S. sanctions or tariffs, putting a new price on their welcome mat. This comes as Uganda, a nation that prefers to receive deportees of African nationalities, already hosts nearly 2 million refugees from neighboring countries. And here at home, some Virginia school districts are getting a lesson from the School of Hard Knocks. The Trump administration is taking punitive action against 5 Northern Virginia districts over their policies supporting transgender students, specifically policies that allow students to use bathrooms and locker rooms that align with their gender identity. The Department of Education has placed the districts on high-risk status, restricting over $50 million in federal funding to a reimbursement-only basis, a move that could create a major financial headache. Education Secretary Linda McMahon claims the districts are violating federal law by abiding by, in her words, woke gender ideology. The districts, however, are standing firm, arguing their policies are legal and necessary to protect all students. Finally, in the nation's capital, federal prosecutors are taking a different shot at gun policy. The U.S. Attorney's Office will no longer bring felony charges for the simple act of carrying a registered rifle or shotgun in public. U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro says the policy shift is based on recent Supreme Court decisions affirming Second Amendment rights. However, this new directive does not apply to handguns, and prosecutors will still vigorously pursue charges against anyone using these weapons to commit a crime or who is legally barred from owning a firearm. It's not a free-for-all, but a reloading of legal strategy to focus on violent criminals rather than otherwise law-abiding citizens. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 4.0, Gemini Pro 2.5, Gemini Flash 2.5, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.